Hey everyone, and welcome back to Uncle Sam Fun English. I'm Theus.
And I'm Belle. Ready for another exciting lesson?
Absolutely. Today we're tackling how to think in English automatically and speak without translation.
A lot of people struggle with that mental translation process, right?
Exactly. We're going to give you a step-by-step blueprint to break free from that.
Let's dive in.
So Belle, why is it so hard for people to just think in English instead of constantly translating?
That's a fantastic question, Theus. It's tough because our brains are wired to process information in our native language first. Many learners translate because they feel safer and more confident understanding the information in a familiar way. A common error is trying to directly translate word for word, which often leads to awkward or incorrect sentences.
I totally get that. I remember when I first started learning Portuguese, I would try to translate everything from English, and it sounded completely unnatural, almost robotic. Did you experience something similar when learning new languages?
Absolutely. It's a natural phase in language learning. The problem is that direct translation rarely captures the nuances and idiomatic expressions of the target language. This happens because different languages have different grammatical structures and cultural contexts.
Exactly. I've heard so many learners say things like, "The house is blue of Maria," instead of, "Maria's blue house," trying to directly translate the sentence structure from their native language. It's a classic example.
Precisely. This happens because learners are relying on their existing linguistic framework instead of adopting the English way of thinking. The brain is essentially taking the path of least resistance. This slows down fluency and hinders natural conversation.
So, we see a lot of these errors. For instance, using make instead of do for certain activities, like make sport instead of do sport, or saying I have hunger instead of I'm hungry. These direct translations can be confusing for native speakers.
Right, and the impact of this constant translation is significant. It creates a mental bottleneck. Learners are focusing more on finding the equivalent words in their native language than on understanding the overall meaning and context. It also prevents them from truly immersing themselves in the English language and culture.
It's like they're building a wall between themselves and fluency, brick by brick, with each translation. So how do we break down that wall and start thinking directly in English?
The key is to gradually shift your focus from translation to association. Instead of thinking of the English word as a replacement for a word in your native language, start associating it directly with the concept, image, or feeling it represents. Okay, so the first step to thinking in English is to stop translating word for word. Instead, focus on understanding the meaning and context of what you hear or read.
Can you give me a specific example? Like, what does that look like in practice?
Sure, let's say someone says, "It's raining cats and dogs." If you translate that literally, it makes no sense. But the meaning is simply, it's raining heavily. So, focus on the overall idea.
Okay, I think I get it. So, instead of trying to find the Portuguese equivalent for every single word, I should try to understand the general meaning of the sentence.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You're trying to paint a picture in your mind, not create a word-for-word copy. The picture is the meaning.
So, if I hear someone say, "He's pulling my leg," I shouldn't be looking for a leg and someone pulling it. I should understand that it means he's joking or teasing me.
Precisely. Common idioms and expressions are a big part of thinking in English. You need to recognize the meaning behind the words. Another one is, break the leg. It means, good luck.
Got it. So, it's about understanding the implied meaning, not just the literal translation. What if I come across a word I don't know? Should I immediately reach for a dictionary?
Not necessarily. Try to guess the meaning from the context. What other words are used in the sentence? What is the overall situation being described? You can often figure it out without a dictionary. For example, the verdant forest was teeming with life. Even if you don't know verdant, the sentence gives you clues.
Okay, so I see what you mean. I can infer that verdant probably means something like green or lush, because it's describing a forest teeming with life.
Exactly. You're using the surrounding words to understand the meaning. That's a crucial skill for thinking in English. Let's say you're reading a book and you encounter the word serendipity.
I've never seen that word before.
Well, The sentence is, "They found true love by pure serendipity. A chance encounter at a coffee shop led to a lifetime of happiness." What does it suggest about the nature of the encounter?
Okay, so even though I don't know exactly what it means, it sounds like serendipity is a good thing, and it's related to chance or luck. Maybe it means something like good fortune, or a lucky accident.
That's spot on. Serendipity means a fortunate accident or a lucky chance discovery. See how you were able to figure out the general meaning without looking it up? Try that first, then look it up to confirm.
So Belle, what about those tricky situations where you need to describe something complex or abstract? How do you avoid translating then?
That's a great question, Theus. One key is to use simpler vocabulary and focus on explaining the asterisk function or purpose of the thing you're describing. Instead of reaching for a complicated word, break it down.
Give me an example. Let's say I want to explain artificial intelligence. How can I do that without using overly technical terms?
Okay, instead of saying, artificial intelligence is the simulation of human intelligence processes by computer systems, you could say, artificial intelligence is when computers can do things that usually require a human brain, like understanding language or solving problems.
That makes sense. So, focus on what it does, not just what it is technically. I can imagine that's helpful for explaining anything from quantum physics to gardening.
Exactly. And remember to use analogies. Compare the unfamiliar thing to something the other person already understands. For example, AI is like a really smart assistant that can learn from its mistakes.
So, AI is like a super-powered personal assistant. Got it. But what if I'm trying to explain a feeling or emotion? Those can be pretty abstract.
With emotions, focus on the physical sensations and the situations that cause them. Instead of just saying, "I feel frustrated," you might say, "I feel frustrated. My shoulders are tense, and I want to give up because this problem is so difficult."
Okay, so be specific about the physical symptoms and the triggers. It's almost like describing it from an outside perspective. So, if I was feeling anxious before a presentation, I might say, "My palms are sweaty, my heart is racing, and I keep replaying all the things that could go wrong."
Precisely. And you can also use similes. Anxiety feels like I'm trapped in a small room with the walls closing in. Similes help paint a vivid picture.
That's incredibly helpful. What about those words that don't have a direct translation in English? How do you handle those? Like the German word, Schadenfreude, the pleasure derived from someone else's misfortune?
Those are tough. The best approach is to explain the concept in detail. Schadenfreude is that feeling you get when someone you don't like experiences a minor setback, and you secretly feel a little bit happy about it, even though you know you shouldn't.
So you define it using a longer explanation, rather than searching for a non-existent single word equivalent. It's about conveying the meaning, not just finding the perfect word. What about idioms? Are those okay to use?
Idioms are great, but be mindful of your audience. If you're speaking to someone who's not familiar with English idioms, they can be confusing. For example, saying, "It's raining cats and dogs," might not make sense to someone who's just learning the language.
So, context is key. You have to gauge your audience's level and adjust your language accordingly. If they're not familiar with idioms, it's better to explain the literal meaning. Like instead of saying, "break a leg," say, "good luck with your performance."
Exactly. And it's always a good idea to explain the meaning of an idiom the first time you use it with someone who's learning English. Break a leg means good luck. It's an old theater tradition.
That's a fantastic point. So, use simpler language, focus on function and purpose, use analogies and similes, and explain concepts in detail. And be mindful of idioms and your audience's understanding. This is all incredibly helpful. Let's move on to the next part.
Now, let's consider situations where you're explaining something complex. Instead of directly translating each word, try to grasp the overall concept and explain it in simpler English.
That makes sense. So, instead of struggling to find the exact word, I should focus on conveying the meaning using words I already know?
Exactly. For example, if you want to say, "I procrastinated," and you can't remember the word, you could say, "I kept putting it off until the last minute."
Okay, that's a great alternative. So, I'm describing the action instead of trying to find the perfect word. I can see how that would make speaking much smoother.
Precisely. The goal is fluency, not perfection. And if you're finding this helpful, don't forget to subscribe to Uncle Sam Fun English. We have loads more tips and tricks.
Definitely. I've been practicing this, and it is making a difference. But what if I'm in a professional setting and need to sound more formal?
In more formal settings, you can still apply this principle. Instead of using slang or overly casual language, focus on clear and concise English that's easy to understand.
So, the key is to adapt my vocabulary and sentence structure to the context, but still think in English to avoid direct translation.
Absolutely. Think about how native speakers would explain the same concept in a formal setting. Listen to podcasts, watch news reports, or read articles to get a feel for it.
That's a great tip. I often get stuck trying to translate idioms or expressions literally, which never works out well.
Idioms are tricky. Instead of trying to translate them, try to understand the underlying meaning and then express that meaning in your own words, using simpler language if necessary.
Right. Like if someone says, break a leg, I shouldn't actually tell them to break their leg. I should understand it means, good luck, and say that instead.
Exactly. Now, let's say you're in a meeting and someone uses a technical term you don't understand. What do?
I used to freeze up and pretend I understood, but now I realize that's not helpful. I should ask for clarification, right?
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to say, could you explain that term in simpler terms? Or, I'm not familiar with that concept, could you elaborate? Most people are happy to help.
That's a good point. Asking for clarification is much better than trying to guess and potentially misunderstanding something important.
And remember, the more you practice thinking in English, the easier it will become. It's like learning any new skill. It takes time and effort, but it's definitely achievable.
So, it's not about being perfect or knowing every single word. It's about being able to communicate effectively and confidently in English.
Exactly. Focus on getting your message across clearly and concisely, and the rest will fall into place. Keep practicing, keep listening, and keep thinking in English. Let's practice. I'm going to give you a sentence in Portuguese, and you need to translate it directly into English. Then we'll work on rephrasing it to sound more natural and like you're thinking in English.
Okay, I'm ready. Hit me with it. I'll do my best to avoid that clunky translation.
Alright, the sentence is, Eu estou com fome. Your direct translation, please.
Okay, direct translation. I am with hunger. I know that's not right, but that's what it translates to literally.
Exactly. That's a common mistake learners make. It's grammatically correct in a literal sense, but it doesn't flow in English. The English way to say it is,
I am hungry. Simple and direct, got it. It's about changing the way you structure the sentence.
Precisely. Instead of focusing on the being with hunger concept, you're directly stating your state of being hungry. That's the key to thinking in English automatically. Let's try another one.
Bring it on. I'm ready to rewire my brain.
Okay, how about this? Faz muito tempo que não te vejo. What's the direct translation?
Directly translated, it would be something like, makes much time that I don't see you. That sounds incredibly awkward.
Absolutely. It's a very literal translation. Now, what's a more natural way to say that in English?
I think, it's been a long time since I've seen you. Is that right?
Perfect. You nailed it. Notice how you completely restructured the sentence. You didn't focus on making time, but instead on the duration of time passed since the last meeting.
Right. It's not about translating word for word, but understanding the underlying meaning and expressing it in a natural English structure.
Exactly. That's the difference between translating and thinking in English. Let's do one more complex example. Estou ansioso para as férias.
Okay. Literally it would be, I am anxious for the vacations. But anxious has a slightly different connotation in English, right? It sounds more worried.
You're spot on. Anxious, in English implies worry or unease. While it can be used to express eagerness, it's not the most common or natural choice in this context. What could you use instead?
Maybe, I'm looking forward to the vacation.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to the vacation. Perfectly captures the excitement and anticipation without the negative connotation of anxious.
So, instead of just translating the words, I need to consider the overall feeling and choose the words that best convey that feeling in English.
Exactly. It's about choosing the right words to convey the intended emotion or meaning. Let's try one more. Preciso dar jeito nisso.
Okay. Direct translation would be something like, I need to give away in this. Which makes absolutely no sense in English.
Nope, it doesn't. It's a very common phrase in Portuguese, but the direct translation falls flat. How would you express that same idea in natural English?
I think, maybe, I need to figure this out, or, I need to sort this out.
Excellent. Both, I need to figure this out, and, I need to sort this out, are perfect alternatives. They convey the idea of needing to find a solution or resolve a problem.
So, it's about understanding the idiom and finding an equivalent expression in English, rather than trying to translate it literally.
Precisely. Idioms and common expressions are often the trickiest part of language learning because they rarely translate directly.
Okay, I think I'm getting the hang of it. It's about recognizing the thought pattern in Portuguese and then expressing that same thought pattern using natural English phrasing.
You've got it. It's a constant process of comparing and contrasting the two languages and finding the best way to bridge the gap. Now, let's throw a slightly longer sentence your way. Sei eu subis, teria te avisado.
Okay, direct translation, if I knew, would have you warned. That's a grammatical disaster.
It certainly is. That's a classic example of a conditional sentence that gets mangled in translation. What's the correct English structure?
Okay, I think, if I had known, I would have told you, right?
Absolutely perfect. You correctly use the past perfect tense in the if clause and the conditional perfect in the main clause.
It's all about understanding the grammatical structures and how they differ between the two languages. This is not easy.
It takes practice, absolutely, but the more you consciously make the effort to think in this way, the more automatic it will become.
So, constant practice and exposure to the language are key to breaking free from that literal translation trap.
Exactly. Immerse yourself in English as much as possible, watch movies, listen to podcasts, read books, and try to think in English throughout your day. And, of course, keep practicing with us here at Uncle Sam Fun English.
Absolutely, and we encourage our listeners to try this exercise themselves. Think of a common phrase you use in your native language and then try to express it in natural English, focusing on the meaning rather than the literal translation. So, today we learned how to bypass translation and think directly in English for smoother conversations.
A great tip is to actively label objects around you in English to reinforce the direct connection.
Keep practicing, and you'll be thinking in English automatically before you know it.
Remember to subscribe to Uncle Sam Fun English for more lessons like this.
Thanks for listening. Keep practicing.
See you next time. Bye everyone.